When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Research is the biggest thing anytime that you are going into a new space or launching anything new, understanding who your audience is, researching what they want, having a feedback loop on, we're producing this particular news, this particular product, and really being open to understanding what people want and adjusting as needed.
This is Small Press, Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. My guest on the podcast today is Melissa Taboada. She is the editor-in-chief of the Austin Current down in Austin, Texas. And we've been going back and forth for a little bit and finally hopped on here. So Melissa, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. I'd love if you could just kind of set the stage and just tell it's our first time meeting face to face. Tell myself and the audience a little bit about your background, your career, and kind of local journalism. Just kind of set the stage there. Yeah.
Great. So I have been professionally in the journalism industry for 29 years, so, spanning 3 decades. And even before that, I got my start in high school, joining the high school paper in El Paso, Texas. So I am definitely a Texas girl. I have my roots here most of my life, but I've spent most of that time in legacy journalism, more than 20 years as a reporter in Austin, before I was at the Boston Globe most recently. And I have covered everything from just the daily reporting, beat coverage, accountability journalism, education, city hall, local government, public systems, things that require digging into public records, attending long meetings, translating complex policy decisions for people. And so, like I said, I was at the Boston Globe for about 4.5 years and decided to take a leap of faith in joining the nonprofit local journalism landscape. And so I just moved back to Texas at the end of last year and launched Austin Current.
Very cool. And could you tell us a little bit about the Austin Current, just as an organization? I'll let you take it from there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nonprofit local newsroom. It started under the umbrella of the Texas Tribune, which also is a nonprofit Texas newsroom. And we launched our first stories just 9 weeks ago. So we are in our infancy. And we launched to help fill in gaps in local coverage, particularly around public institutions like the school district and city hall. So we focus on education, local government, and growth and development. And our work is rooted primarily in accountability journalism, definitely wanting to be service journalism to the public and give something for them that they can use on their daily lives.
Yeah. And for anybody interested, I actually had, since it's under the umbrella of the Texas Tribune, I think is how you said it, I had Matthew Watkins on the podcast a while back. So if anybody wants to hear he's kind of been there for, I think, I shouldn't rely on my memory live like this, but I think since close to the beginning. So if you want to hear kind of the story on that, you can go back in the feed and listen to that one also.
It's a great publication.
Yes. Yeah. It's really cool. It says that, I was just looking just once again on LinkedIn, and you kind of mentioned covering education, growth and development in Austin. I didn't exactly have a question for this in prep, but I'm curious now. I spent most of my life in the Denver area, which experienced massive growth in the last 20 years, which Austin's, I think, is number 1 in the country. I'm curious, any takeaways on reporting? I guess I don't have this framed out too well, and I'm sorry I didn't have it in the prep, but could you talk a little bit about that growth in the city, since you kind of, in the muck of covering these kind of things, and it's just something I'm personally curious about living in a place that experienced massive growth like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's changed a lot. I first moved here in 1995, so spent 27 years in Austin before I moved up to Massachusetts. And just the explosion of growth back then. Dell had just like
Hmm.
one little building, and it's sprawling. Didn't have Google here, so big tech hub, and traffic is horrendous.
Yep.
I will say that is the biggest difficulty for me personally, is having been able to zip through the city in the 90s and early 2000s to now. It seems like I'm always in gridlock, but just everything from the redevelopment, gentrification of the East Side, which primarily housed Black families, Latino families, to now you see a lot of high rises and condos and young professionals who are living there. So the city's landscape has changed tremendously.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Like I said, it's funny, the traffic. I grew up in Denver, the Denver metro, and lived there most of my life till about right before the pandemic. And we moved out to the western side of Colorado. It's like a town of 20,000. People ask me why we moved. I'm like, that is the only reason. I could not handle the traffic anymore. It was making my blood boil just from, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because it's personally kind of like interesting to me. Sorry. Could you talk, sorry, I want to dig in a little bit more about the Austin Current, like the newsroom. Like what size, you're the editor in chief. How big is the newsroom? How big is the organization from like a personnel standpoint? I'm just curious, how large it is. Yeah.
We're tiny, so there's only 7 of us.
Okay.
We have our GM who oversees us and me. I have a deputy editor, and then our reporters and community engagement manager. So very small, but we also have the resources of the Texas Tribune. So we are housed within the Texas Tribune newsroom right in the heart of downtown. And we are able to tap them for various help when it comes to data or building our website. So even though there's technically only 7 of us, we do have more resources beyond that. And the cool thing about Austin Current is we are a collaborator. So we work with the NPR affiliate, KUT. KUT News has their own newsroom and sets of reporters, but we're doing our story planning together, talking about what stories they can cover, what stories we can cover. And so we share resources that way so that we're putting more news out to the community. And we also have a similar partnership with Austin PBS, and we share our government reporter, and he does work for them and work for us. So it'll be digital on our end and then a TV version for them.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're kind of in the same building as the Tribune. I had somebody on the show, and I'm blanking on who it was right now, but they kind of specialize in investigative journalism. And she was telling me basically that the best friend to an investigative journalist is a beat reporter, which I hadn't really thought about before. I don't really have a journalistic background. I'm like, that makes total sense. Like if you're kind of diving into something and you go talk to it. So I'm guessing there's some kind of synergies, synchronicities there, being in the same space with those other folks. Yeah.
Definitely. And we are planning on some collaborations later this year. Yeah. And during the Austin shooting, we also collaborated on stories. Some of the Texas Tribune reporters and a couple of my reporters were working together on covering that, as well as the KUT News reporters. So we were kind of spreading that news out to the various reporters to, one, do as much as we can, but 2, to also prevent burnout. So
Right.
we do have that, and it is great to be working with some of their reporters and editors.
Right. That makes sense. And what you mentioned, kind of working with, I mean, obviously with the Tribune and the NPR affiliate, I think you said. What other formats that it kind of comes out in? I'm sure digital. Everybody's digital these days. I'm sure probably social media. Anything else you're doing, like podcasts, newsletters, social? Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we are online, and so our website, austincurrent.org, and we publish all of our stories there. There is an audio version of that, but we also have a newsletter, and that's our primary delivery system. So people sign up, and it goes directly to their inbox, and then we're on social media as well.
Gotcha.
Growing a successful business has never been easy. But whether you're navigating a complex industry or trying to reinvent one, our breadth of banking experts are here to collaborate on market-proven solutions. At KeyBank, we're built to grow with your changing needs because we're not just here for the business you are now, we're here for the business you'll become. Reimagine business as usual. KeyBank opens doors. Learn more at key.com/B2B.
And since, sorry, I just keep asking questions I didn't have in the prep, but it's interesting as we talk. Since it is under the umbrella of the Tribune, like, because you said you're a small team, 7, I think you said 7 or 8. Like
7.
On the business side, on the finances, is that kind of like subsidized by the Tribune? Are you on your own in terms of that, in terms of, being sustainable, generating revenue? Or is this kind of like an offshoot newsroom of the Tribune? Is that phrased well? Yeah.
Long term, we will be on our own.
Okay.
We will be, and we're also doing our own fundraising and things like that. For example, we just applied for a foundation grant, and we split, we're planning on splitting that funding between the Tribune and Austin Current. So some of it is like we're totally on our own. We're getting our own donors, and that is part of our long-term sustainability plan. But I don't think the Trib is like leaving us high and dry,
Right.
In terms of finances. And it is part of their, overall portfolio. They got into local just over a year ago with another publication in Waco. So they are supporting us.
Very cool. My tab just disappeared. I like to ask this question when people have, because you're in Texas, you were in Boston for 4 years, and then back in Texas. Since this podcast is kind of focused on local media, local news in particular, I like people who've been to other parts of the country. I always like to ask if they've had any takeaways from work, because Austin and Boston, besides rhyming, they're drastically different, cities, demographics, economies, all that. Do you have just like a couple takeaways for other pros out there who may be making a shift or, trying to learn a new city like that?
Well, it was a little bit more difficult for me to learn the city of Boston because I was no longer a reporter. I was an editor.
Right.
And
right.
I feel the best way that you can learn a city is being a reporter on the ground. You're meeting new people. You're developing your sources. So I was getting that kind of secondhand through my reporter. So I think research is the biggest thing anytime that you are going into a new space or launching anything new, understanding who your audience is, researching what they want, having a feedback loop on, we're producing this particular news, this particular product, and really being open to understanding what people want and adjusting as needed. So I loved being in Boston. I love the public transit. Kind of sad that that's not here in Austin yet. So.
Yeah, I was just like in that take because, it's just such a big country, such different places, and it's just, so city to city is so different. So it's 2026. I have to ask everybody about AI. It's just moving so fast. Yeah, it's becoming such a huge thing. I like to get different people's takes on it. Just what are your thoughts on AI? Since you're an editor, in the newsroom in particular, I guess, and curious if you're using any tools, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think it can be helpful in very clearly defined parts of the reporting process. So we use AI, use Otter, for example, so transcribing interviews. That was something that I didn't have access to when I was a reporter, so it saves a lot of time, although you do have to go back because sometimes it will transcribe incorrect words, and so you just have to verify everything. And we also have Everlit, which is the audio transcription to make it accessible, our stories accessible to the hearing impaired. And when I was at the Globe, we used a few more tools. One of them, we were using it to redact. We had just droves of public records, and we needed to redact student personal information. So it was able to go through and do that, but it also missed some names, so we had to manually go back and go through that. And the Globe also had a tool where you could put in your story and it would generate headline ideas. And that was really useful because sometimes you're just like, you have some ideas, but you maybe get stuck in your way of thinking. And so that helped foster something that was fresh, and you wouldn't use it verbatim, but you could, take a word from it and say like, oh, I think I like that, phrased a little bit better than what we had, when what I was thinking before. So we're pretty limited on what we use AI for, but it's only going to expand over time.
Right.
I never, I don't think that it should be used at all to replace human journalism. And,
Right.
It doesn't have ethics. So nothing can replace that kind of human judgment.
Yeah. And I mean, I would even argue, no matter how advanced it gets, that it can't really, an AI can't go to a location and talk to a human as a human, so I think there's a bit of a moat there. It's funny. I kind of smirked when you brought up Otter. I talk to people all over the space on this podcast, business side, entrepreneurs, consultants. Every time I talk to a journalist or somebody in a newsroom, Otter gets mentioned by name, not like a different transcription. It's always Otter. I need to get them to sponsor the show or something like that at this point. And I use it too. Yeah.
It's pretty popular. I don't use it. I mean, I've had transcriptions sent to me via Otter, but like I said, I started editing before that really became popular. And there are other platforms. I just couldn't tell you what they are off the top of my head.
Yeah. That's also that's the first I've heard. That's why I like asking this question to everyone. I've never heard of the redaction. I'm not sure how you would say that services. That's really cool. I can see how that'd be hugely beneficial. And just my experiences with AI, I could see how you would definitely want to double check it. Kind of like you were saying, like it would definitely miss some, but I bet it cuts a lot of the effort out of doing that as like a single human sitting down and doing that. Yeah.
It did, but like I said, it did miss some things, and we had to go back manually and take them out just because it was sensitive student information.
Yeah, you don't want that getting out. That's interesting, though. I had not heard that use case, and I love it when I hear new ones. Okay, I've been asking everyone this lately. Flash forward 5 years. Seems like a good time horizon. I don't know why I picked 5. Where do you see yourself and the Austin Current in like a perfect world? If everything, say the Current, somewhat new, grows the way you'd like it to, does what you want it to do, what's it look like in like half a decade?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that it grows into a sustainable, well-sourced newsroom, strong reporting staff, a trusted presence in the community. How large, I am, leery of trying to look into that that future. I'm not sure, but I've seen a lot of good success stories where, you could be up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, with the staff. And that would be amazing if we could do that. I would like us at that time to be doing more ambitious investigative work. We can do some of it, but the larger the staff, the more resources, the easier it is to get that done. So if we had the larger staff, then I'd also like to expand our coverage areas and just, having a stronger and stronger presence in the newsroom. And I hope I'm still at the helm overseeing a larger newsroom.
Could you see it, just out of curiosity, could you see it going to like, say, other cities in Texas, or do you does it kind of lose as it grows? That's the hard thing with news organizations on the local level, is it's hard to keep the culture, keep the whatever the magic sauce is as it grows. And if it couldn't grow to like, say, other cities in Texas, do you think it could be replicated in other cities around the country? Like, I might be similar models elsewhere, but any takes on that?
Well, I don't think Austin Current would go to another city.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's possible that Texas Tribune would launch another publication in another city, since they have Waco and they have us. And I definitely think that we will be a litmus on success and whether or not this is a sustainable model for them to expand into other places. A diversified funding model. So not just getting it from one foundation or from only single donors, but just, spread across there. So I do think that we will, be a good test case in whether or not they move forward or want to move forward.
That's great.
With other newsrooms.
I'm sure it will be. I'll be following along and rooting for you, Melissa. But That's really all the prep I had. This is great. Very cool case study. Can you tell people where to find you online, you personally and the Austin Current, where what I should link to, anything you want to promote, anything coming up?
Yeah. Yeah. So austincurrent.org, we're online. And then we have an Instagram _Austin Current, LinkedIn, Austin Current, Facebook, Austin Current. And we're also on Nextdoor. But yeah, you can do that. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Melissa Taboada at Melissa Taboada.
Cool. Yeah, I'll pull it all up and I'll link. So if you're listening, you can just scroll down and shoot a connection to Melissa. Melissa, thank you so much. Very cool. Thank you for being here. Yeah, appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on. And you can also, when you go onto our website, you'll see where it says newsletter, and you can sign up straight from there if you want it directly into your inbox.
Awesome. Yep. Anybody from Austin, go sign up. It's useful information. Cool. Melissa, thank you so much. Thanks for being here and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.